What's up everyone? If you're new to the channel, welcome. And if you're not, well, thanks for coming back. In today's video, I'll be taking you on a deep dive into the 45U Nature Style Aquarium. Alright, so let's just begin with the glass itself. As I mentioned in the beginning, this is a UNS 45U rimless aquarium. I really love these low iron glass tanks. I think they look super nice. They're super clear. Let's see if I can get it to focus. The 45-degree edges are beautiful, and I love that. Super seamless. It looks super clear. The glass itself is just a beautiful piece altogether. The 45U, it holds 9 US gallons, which if I did the calculations correctly, that's 34 liters. I don't know the centimeters across and back, but maybe I'll put that in the title here. But this is 17 inches across by 11 inches deep and 11 inches tall. So it's a nice size. It holds plenty of water. It still classifies itself as a nano tank, I believe, because it's under 10 gallons. But very manageable, very doable, and it just looks really good. So talking about the stand, it's a pretty cheaply made stand. It's just an IKEA stand that I picked up a while back. It's really blown out. As you can see, I put a very unprofessional paint job on this thing. It used to be white, but it wouldn't look good in the house, so I put a coat of black paint on it. You can see how unprofessional my painting skills actually are, as well as on the handle here. That just doesn't look good at all. But, you know, it sits behind the couch. Not a lot of people see it, so I think it's fine. Opening this thing up, I've got some reinforcements here. I don't necessarily think that it's needed. I think the tank holds just fine, but I wanted to play it safe. You got the UNS Delta 30 canister filter here. One thing I had to do this little makeshift stand for the filter, because the max lift of the UNS Delta 30 is 28 inches. If I had placed the filter down on the base, the total lift would be like 35 inches, so it wouldn't have made it. So I had to lift up the filter with this little wood makeshift stand here, but it does the job and the filter runs just fine. Alright, so moving back into the tank, this is a high-tech setup, so I am running CO2 in this tank. I'm using the Aquario Neo diffuser right here. Pull up and see it on the back side right here. I really love these diffusers because you can customize the size and bend it specifically to the size and length of the tank. So you can see like the edge here is custom bent right around the edge of the tank. It sits exactly the way I want it to at the exact height. I really love these diffusers. I highly recommend them. You can find them on boostplant.com. I'll link that below. As for the light, right now I actually currently have the Chihiros C2 light on this tank. I haven't decided if I'm going to keep the light or if I'm going to change it to the ONF flat nano. Right now this has just kind of been a temporary light that I just had to put on there, but I haven't taken it off yet. So, you know, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it, but at the moment, it's running the Chihiro C2 with this flexible arm, which is really nice. It gives nice color. You can see with the Ludwigia Super Red, it's giving some nice color. But I think ultimately I will probably change this out for the ONF Flat Nano, but at the moment, we're just running with the Chihiro C2. All right, and keeping things real, we've got, for the intake and outflow, we've got the Aquario Neo Flow system here. I haven't gotten around to cleaning my pipes yet. I know I need to. It looks kind of disgusting. That's on the list of things to do this week, hopefully. But, you know, it works great. You got the intake right here, the outflow right here. Now, with the Aquario Neo Flow system, there is a skimmer that can be attached to the outflow. But honestly, I found with this system that if the water level drops even a couple centimeters, the surface skimmer starts taking in a lot of air and it makes it really, really noisy. So I didn't like that, so I took the skimmer off. I don't see a lot of protein film on this tank right now, so you know, it's doing fine. So we're gonna leave it the way it is, but that's the system as it is right now. And like you saw earlier, that comes down and connects to the UNES Delta 30 canister filter here in the bottom. So I think when it comes to equipment, that's everything that's in there. I didn't touch on this drop checker. This is just I think it's the Dymax drop checker from Boost Plant. I really like it. It does a great job. It's super cheap, super simple, but you can find these things on Amazon or any aquarium equipment supply company has these things. They're super cheap. And looks like Zuko's coming to say hi, so that's cool. But again, I can link this in the description. There will be a ton of links in the description of this video, just with every piece of equipment and all the plants as well. So like I said, that's about it for the equipment. We'll get into the plant side of things here in a second. One thing I did want to touch on, and you'll see it in this video, is this tank is completely algae free. Somehow, some way, every single plant in here has no algae whatsoever on it. I'm very fortunate that there's no algae. It looks like there's a little bit of algae on this Bucephalandra here, but other than that, there's like nothing. So I'll touch on that, but this tank is doing very, very well. I think I also forgot to mention, but the hardscape in this tank is Malaysian driftwood, and I also added a couple of boutique Siriu stones in here for just that little detail aspect. I didn't want to have just solid wood as the hardscape, and you know, these rocks give a great little spot for the Bucephalandra to sit on, and I'm all here for that. So let's get right on into the plant side of things. Alright, so let's start with the substrate and make our way from there. For the substrate in this tank, I'm using UNS Contra soil. I think I've got roughly around 6 pounds of it in here. I had used some soil from another tank that I took down, along with new soil, which the folks over at Boost Plant had sent me. So very thankful for that, but I love this soil. I believe this was the fine brown mix. So Boost Plant has 2 options when it comes to colors, and then 3 options when it comes to size. All right, next up is the Elocarius parvula, or dwarf hairgrass, which I planted in a carpet. If you saw the setup video of this tank, you'll know that this took a long time to plant. I also had dry started this tank, so I really felt like that helped the carpet establish its roots, and it's just really, really done well. Next up after the dwarf hairgrass is the Helanthum tenellum. I've got this placed in certain spots kind of as a transition plant from the dwarf hairgrass into the stem plants. It's doing really well though. You can see it's growing. I recently had to pull out some of the runners which were spreading into the dwarf hairgrass carpet, but for the most part I've just been letting it do its thing and letting nature take its course, and I've been really enjoying how it is looking. So next up is all the Bucephalandra, and if I'm being honest, there's so many different types in here that I don't even remember which ones I planted and where. But you got some right here. There's a little guy tucked in right here. There's some deep in the back. There's some back here too. You know, there's just Bucephalandra everywhere in this tank, and I'm all for it. I think it looks great. There's even a little plant up here at the top which is looking so cool. And if you look down, there's roots that are shooting down into the open, which is one of the coolest things in my opinion. So the Bucephalandra is doing really well. 0 algae on this thing. When the CO2 has been on for a while, it really pearls a lot and just looks so beautiful. Now in the front, I've got a nice little mix here of some small stem plants, and that's right here. You'll see it's a mix of Rotala Amania bonsai and Bacopa monnieri. Now, right now the Rotala is still in its immersed form, so it looks basically identical to the Bacopa. You can't tell at all, but I can tell you for a fact that this front stem that's in focus is a Rotala, and then these back stems right here are the Bacopa. And I have to say, the Bacopa has very quickly become probably my favorite plant in this tank. I've never kept it before, but just the way it grows, the way it looks, and when you have CO2 in your tank, this plant holds pearls like none other. It is one of the most beautiful things I think I've ever seen. So it doesn't grow fast, it doesn't grow super tall, so I highly recommend it. If you have a high-tech setup, you have to get yourself some Bacopa because it is very quickly become one of my favorite plants to keep. Next up is the Sterogyne repens. I didn't plant a whole lot of these, honestly. There's a couple right here, maybe some tucked somewhere back in the Bacopa, and you can see there's some deep in the back there in the shade. So not a lot, but I love the little detail that it brings, and I think by not having a lot, it makes it one of those interesting plants that just adds to the texture and doesn't overwhelm the scape. All right, now this plant is definitely the one that catches everyone's eye when they see it, and I can't say I blame them one bit. The Prospernica palustris with CO2 injection is quite honestly one of the most interesting and unique plant leaves I think I've ever seen in an aquarium plant. Everyone that sees this plant is just blown away by the shape and the texture of the leaves. When you have CO2 injection and it's been going for a longer period in the day, it holds the CO2 bubbles just in a stunning fashion, and it's definitely an eye catcher, definitely a conversation piece, and I have to say it's gotta be one of my favorite plants that I'm keeping right now, just because of how unique it is and the texture. It's just amazing to look at and such a unique and cool plant. I highly recommend you try to keep this if you can. I've also got Christmas moss that's decorating the wood, and it's growing beautifully. It's cascading down, creating these layers, which is super cool. You can see it's over here on this piece of wood as well. There's also some, it's hard to see, but there's some HC Cuba that I've got growing epiphytically on the wood. There's some back here too. Just a couple pieces, but it looks incredible and just adds a nice little texture that I think is really great. Now, obviously we can't talk about this tank and ignore the beautiful red colors that are just popping at all times. And so let's go down into the middle of the tank here where we've got the Alternanthera reinecki. I think I've planted, probably 6 stems of this stuff out of tissue culture. It's really grown well, and it's thriving, gives a nice little splash of color. But the star of the show, obviously, is this Ludwigia Super Red that is just firing on all cylinders at all times. I've got it growing in the back. I've got it growing through the wood here. I think Zuko, being a beta with red on him, really appreciates having that camouflage too, but it just really adds that nice pop of color. Very excited, it's doing very well. All right, and we can't talk about this tank without bringing up the Myrophyllum guana stem plants. I probably butchered that name, but you know what, it's whatever. This stem plant, I planted from tissue culture, and I love it. The texture that it gives, it's just beautiful. It was a lot slower growing than I thought it was gonna be, if I'm completely honest. But, you know, the less trimming I have to do, the better in this case. So I like it. I think it adds a nice bit of texture, and you know, it looks really cool. It looks really good. It's growing slowly, but it's growing well, and that's all that really matters. I also forgot to mention, you'll see it right here, there's a couple stems of the Hygrophila pinnatifida in here. Just again, added a couple stems for the texture aspect, but it's really, everything's doing really, really well in this tank right now. So honestly guys, I think I've covered everything in this tank. I don't think there's anything else to talk about. If you have any questions or, you know, are curious about some of the plants or anything, drop them in the comments below and I will do my best to respond to those. So I think that's it. I know this has been a long video, but if you made it to the end, I appreciate you guys a lot. There's a lot going on in this tank, but it's doing really well, and I'm very excited and very happy with how it's turned out. And if you're not already, go ahead and give me a follow on Instagram. You'll see more real-time and in-the-moment updates on this tank as well as the other tanks in my gallery. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.